Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the West Lindsey series. This is one of the 9 districts of Lincolnshire and one of the county's most rural. It has 128 civil parishes. Let's see which one this episode's all about. Hello folks, welcome back to West Lindsey. Now this is the most complicated parish which I'll be filming today, not least of which because the names of the places in it can get a little bit confusing. In this parish there is a Toft by Newton, there's a Newton-by-Toft, there's a Newtoft, and I have heard it called Newton Toft before, but its official name is Toft Newton. If you can understand that, well, you're a better person than me. We're in Newtoft to start this one off. Welcome to Toft Newton. The West Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. And this video is also sponsored by Jamie's Fitness Studio, based on Low Road, Greyingham, near Curtin in Lindsey. Jamie is one busy lady. Check her out by calling 07906 749 574 or emailing hello@jamies.co.uk. Online membership is available. There's a link to her Facebook page in the description. Jamie's Fitness Studio. Get fit, get happy, get healthy. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome to West Lindsey's most confusing parish, bar none. Named Toft Newton, there is no Toft Newton village. Instead, there are 2 villages called Newton-by-Toft and Toft-next-Newton. And there's also the small hamlet of Newtoft. Adding to the confusion, this one also has been called Newton Toft by some in the past. Let's break it down bit by bit. The southern portion of the land this one covers is all to do with the former RAF Faldingworth, whilst the northern part is more about farming and fishing. When RAF Faldingworth was an active base, a collection of houses were built to its northeastern side. These are now what we know as Newtoft, but they were originally NCO married quarters, much like the ones we've seen before close to other former RAF bases. The entire estate was sold off in the 1980s and was renamed to the Virginia Estate. To the west of the estate is a collection of former RAF buildings, which are now used as Newtoft Business Park. If you head north, you'll find yourself in Newton-by-Toft, the location of the parish's one and only active church. Then there's Toft-next-Newton, the smallest of the 3 settlements, which is very rural and based more about farming. Between them is Toft Newton Reservoir, which was built to supply the River Ancombe with water during the summer. It's now a trout fishery, aiming to become one of the best in the country. Hopefully all this makes sense. Let's go. Welcome to Toft Newton, or should that be Newton Toft, or something else similar. We begin in the hamlet of Newtoft, which is the newest of all the settlements in this one. Newtoft came into existence thanks to its proximity to the former RAF Faldingworth. In fact, these houses are all linked to the RAF. Newtoft is a collection of at least 127 former Air Ministry properties. In much the same way as in Hemswell Cliff and Scampton, these were the married quarters for RAF Faldingworth. The whole hamlet is often known by a different name. That's because in 1980, First State Holdings, part of the Welbeck Group of companies, acquired the entire estate. As the company were also developing housing at that time opposite the Pentagon in Virginia, they renamed this the Virginia Estate. All the roads here were renamed after locations around Washington in the United States, such as Washington Drive, Prince William Road, and Fairfax Road. So by now you'll have definitely got the idea that Newtoft is very residential. It does have a few landmarks to see though. There is a village hall here and a couple of other bits and bobs. There's also a parish council notice board, and as you can see, Toft Newton Parish Council. It's got to be one of the most confusing names in the entire country. You know, the fact that it's called Toft Newton, but there isn't actually a village called Toft Newton. It's Newtoft, Toft-by-Newton or Toft-next-Newton, and Newton-by-Toft, and it's even been called Newton Toft as well in the past, I think, by some people. So it's a really difficult one to get your head around, but you know, if you understand where all the places are within it, you're okay. So let's carry on round Newtoft. I'll leave a card on that board in a moment, and we'll check out what else it's got. We'll make our way to the village hall next, I think. Newtoft does have a few basic facilities. There are no shops or pubs, but that phone box still has a phone in it, and there's a pillar box right next to it too. On Washington Drive is Toft Newton Village Hall. Note, not Newtoft Village Hall. This was built in 2016 and was opened by the Reverend Chris Harrington. It replaced a much older building called Newtoft Social Club, which resembled a porter cabin. I found some great pictures of that online, which are linked below. The brand new Village Hall is essentially a large room that can be used for various events. It's equipped with a 5-star kitchen, and it can be hired for £10 an hour. Around the back of the hall there's quite a sizable playground. This is the only one in the whole of Toft Newton Parish, so I imagine it's used well. And that's pretty much Newtoft, very residential with a few basic amenities. Half a kilometre to the west of Newtoft though, there's an industrial estate. Okay, just before we leave Newtoft behind, we're going to take a drive onto the industrial estate. I don't know how much of this I'll be able to capture, but we'll soon find out. This industrial estate goes by the name of Newtoft Business Park. This too used to be RAF related. The estate is a collection of former RAF buildings once used by the airbase. Recording this whole part of the video felt almost like stepping back in time. A lot of them are disused and have seemingly been abandoned, but of course others house modern businesses. This estate is quite a way north of the main airbase, and both are now industrial. RAF Faldingworth still continues to play an important part in testing and developing military equipment. It's still manned, heavily guarded, and patrolled 24 hours a day. That's why you have to make contact to visit the memorial we spoke about last week, which is located at the end of the main runway. In 2014, there were plans to build a solar farm on the old airbase, the largest solar farm in the UK no less. It would have generated some 50 megawatts of electricity, enough to power the equivalent of 12,000 homes. However, these plans were later scrapped. Okay, so with Newtoft behind us, let's explore the other little places within this parish. This is Newton-by-Toft, which is generally residential as well, but not quite to the extent of Newtoft. It's only really got one major landmark, and that is its church. So we'll be talking a bit about that, but I will walk around a bit more and just capture a few other bits and bobs of this place. It's very small. So yeah, Newton-by-Toft, part 2 of this episode. So this is Newton-by-Toft, and this couldn't be much more different from where we've just been. Never associated with the RAF, this feels like a million miles away. Here's an old school, a Victorian red brick building. This does have a date stone, but the date on it has worn away. This has been a private residence since at least 1972. There's some confusion amongst online sources as to the name of this main village road. Some state Clay Lane, others say Main Street. Google Maps leaves it blank. There used to be a Wesleyan chapel in Newton-by-Toft, but religiously, the Church of St Michael is all there is now. This dates from the 12th century and was extensively rebuilt in 1860 by James Fowler. It's made from limestone and ironstone rubble. It has a nave, a chancel, a south porch, and a bellcote with a single bell. All of its furnishings and fittings date from that 1860 restoration, as does the stained glass in the chancel. Let's see what it's like inside. Okay, this church is open, so in we go. Let's see what we've got in here. Make sure to keep the door closed because I don't want any birds getting in. I can hear plenty of them outside. That's what them mesh gates are for, by the way, on the outer doors. Stop birds getting in. Right, okay, let's have a look around in here. It's very dark and I haven't seen any light switches. Yes, I have, because they're there. Let's turn them on. Oh. Has someone not paid the bill? The lights haven't come on. I'll just flick them off again, but there was no light there when I touched the switches. Oh dear, okay. In that case then, it's just going to have to remain dark, isn't it? Let's have a look in the chancel first. See what we've got in here. Bit of stained glass on the right hand side as you enter. There's a plaque underneath this as well. I'm just going to read that and see what this says. The Lord gave and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Eliza Ann Brown died at Toft Rectory, January the 16th, 1866, aged 41. Okay. There are no other tablets in this chancel as far as I can see. Let's have a look on the walls of the nave. No, nothing. Okay, there is a little organ though. It's a quaint little place, but certainly lacking things on the wall. There was a sign on the door that said nothing of value is left in the church. Well, I can see why it says that, quite frankly, but it's still quite a nice place to be. There's another bit of stained glass here. The body of this church was partly, I can't read it, I can't read what that says. If there are any locals out there who know what that says, just there at the bottom of this bit of stained glass, please do let me know, because I can't read it, unfortunately. But yeah, there you go. That's the church here in Newton-by-Toft. Now, there is a church in the other village, Toft-by-Newton, or Toft-next-Newton as well. So we will see another church in a few moments' time. In between these two little villages, there's a reservoir, and that's our next stop. Okay, so here we are then at the reservoir. Now, I can't actually go and view the reservoir in person because, as you can see on this sign, it says no public right of access, access by permission only. So this is as close as I can get to the reservoir. You can obviously tell where it is because there's obviously a raised bank up there, and the water is behind that bank. There's plenty of sheep around, as you can see. It's not something you see very often in Lincolnshire, sheep, to be honest with you. It's more arable farming as opposed to livestock. And this is good for fishing, apparently. Obviously you need permission to fish here because that sign tells you do. But because I can't get really close to the reservoir, that's what today's special section is. Toft Newton Reservoir sits between Newton-by-Toft and Toft-next-Newton, and it's often known as Toft Trout Fishery. It's a popular local site for anglers. On the upper reaches of the River Ancombe, the reservoir is a 40-acre concrete bowl. It's supplied with water from Short Ferry near Fiskerton. Its primary use is to maintain flow in the River Ancombe during the dry summer months, but it's also aiming to become one of the UK's premier trout fisheries. The fish here are restocked weekly and come from Alston Trout Fish Farm near Louth. The highly regarded fish are a mixture of rainbows and blues with a few browns to add variety. The reservoir has a unique wheelie boat facility for the disabled, which is designed to allow wheelchair users to access the fishery. According to its website, there's also a small tackle shop on site and a lodge which offers free chilled fish storage. As well as fishing, the reservoir also attracts bird watchers too. Okay, so we've seen Newtoft and we've seen Newton-by-Toft. This is Toft-next-Newton, or Toft-by-Newton, and this is the most rural of all of the settlements here. This one's definitely got more of a farming feel, and you can certainly see that because there are some farms around. Look, there's one right there with a lorry load of hay. They always say make a wish when you see one of those, you know. Okay, so let's have a look around this place. There's really not much to see here. There's a few houses here and there, and there is a church, like I mentioned earlier, which is over in that direction there. So yeah, this is Toft-next-Newton. So finally, we have Toft-next-Newton, where there's another church. However, we won't be able to get into this one because since 1989 it's been a house. Dedicated to St Peter and St Paul, the church was originally built in the 13th century but was extensively remodelled in 1891 by Hodgson Fowler. This is as close as we can legally get. It remains a Grade 2 listed building, but it was closed in 1986. Also listed is a monument to Mary Roach within the churchyard. The rest of Toft-next-Newton is very much based around farming. Once again, there are no shops or any community features, just the sights, sounds and smells of rural Lincolnshire, another village heavily dependent on farming. There's a parish notice board and a Victorian postbox at least, but that's about your lot here. There is one more listed building here in Toft-next-Newton, and this is it, an impressive farmhouse called the Limes, which was built of red brick in about 1810. And this is also the one that's got the tightest, narrowest roads. It was really challenging trying to find a place to park in this village. I did manage to find a place eventually, just there, but it was, like I said, a bit of a challenge to do so. That has been the parish of Toft Newton, a very interesting one, and one that can get really confusing if you're not a local. You know, you'd be thinking to yourself, am I in Newton-by-Toft? Am I in Toft-next-Newton? Am I in Newtoft, Newton Toft, or Toft Newton? If you can understand that, hopefully you can understand that now that I've put this one on the map. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot. This has been the parish of Toft Newton, and I'm out.